Hello, Leo, and welcome to your reading. This is Bright Soul Collective Tarot. My name is Laura, and these will be your intuitive insights and advice for the month of June 2022. So this reading will be for Leo, Sun, Moon, and Rising. And by all means, if you know your Sun, Moon, and Rising sign, you can feel free to watch or listen to any and all of the readings that apply to you, as each one may resonate differently for you. And in addition to that, as always, do keep in mind these readings are general in nature. They're meant to be applicable to a more broad collective of individuals. So not all of the messages that come through will make sense for you necessarily. That's why I highly do encourage you to take anything and everything that does resonate for you, however that makes sense to your specific situation, whatever that kind of like sparks within you or activates, whatever it makes you think of. Keep an open mind to anything that might be helpful, and you can just simply leave the rest. So Leo, I hope you're doing well. I am super excited to pull some cards and take a look at what kind of energy June might have in store for you. I also can't believe it's June already. Like, that is just wild to me. Time has been flying. That means that I've already been reading for you guys for 6 months. I can't believe it's already been half a year. So yeah, whether it's your first time here or whether you're returning, thank you so much for being here and sharing this time and space with me. I really do enjoy being able to put readings out for you guys, and it's something that I'm looking forward to continuing to do as the months progress. But yeah, super excited to take a look at June. I've got your oracle cards here. Of course, we'll pull some tarot, but as usual, we will begin the reading by me sharing my channeled impressions and messages specifically. So the impressions that I got when I took some time to sit down and connect with your energy before pulling the cards. So we'll get right into that then, Leo. I do want to give you a bit of a disclaimer that I was sensing some kind of like heavy energy. It doesn't have to be like, I don't want to put a label on it. I don't want anyone to think that it's a negative thing, but I do get the sense that maybe there's some heavy energy there. Maybe there's a little bit of struggle because the primary kind of vibe that I was getting was one of avoidance. And so that's not just in terms of avoiding maybe responsibility or avoiding the things that you need to do or that you have to do. But it was kind of like the most highlighted was in terms of self-avoidance, and kind of like not necessarily wanting to take a good look at yourself and what you're experiencing and what that might mean for you. And so there's kind of like an avoidance of anything that would cause you to come to a deeper level of understanding or realization about yourself or your circumstances. And it's kind of like, it could be like a long-term avoidance because there's like some stuff under the surface that might be a little bit difficult to acknowledge or contend with, which is fine because, you know, we all do our growing and healing, you know, on our own timeline. And I think that it's very important to do things when you're ready, but also at the same time, it's like you don't want to be making your life more difficult by putting things off forever. But yeah, the sense that I got is like there's a sense of avoidance, like not really wanting to acknowledge what's going on under the surface, because if you come to that understanding and that realization, then that means you're responsible for doing something about it. So it could just be that you're trying to protect yourself and protect your energy because you're not yet ready to fully acknowledge and accept whatever it is that's going on, particularly if there's something major that needs to change, or maybe there are ways that you are kind of self-sabotaging or habits that you've got that aren't necessarily healthy, that will be hard to break. So I think that it's natural to have that sense of like a little bit of avoidance if you're not in a position to really fully be able to meet yourself where you are and to work through those in such a way that you'll be able to accept and move forward. And so it's kind of like you might be hesitant to take time to reflect. You might be hesitant to acknowledge what kind of emotions you're experiencing, and to kind of figure out what it is that's really going on under the surface. and to like really check in with yourself and get honest with yourself about what's going on. And it's like there's also a sense of like maybe even being scared that if you do take that time to check in and feel those feelings, like you might be scared of what you'll find or what realizations you'll come to. And then especially like what that's going to mean in terms of changes that you may have to begin making moving forward. So yeah, I did get a lot of hesitance, a lot of avoidance, maybe a little bit of fear, and just a general disinterest in whatever's going on in your inner world, like your emotions you're experiencing. And it's coming from a place of self-protection. So maybe you don't feel as though you're in a position or you have the resources right now to fully acknowledge. So it's like there may be things calling for your attention, and intuitively you might be aware of some stuff that needs work, and it's just like you need a little bit more time to get to the place where you can fully kind of dive into that, because I feel like Leos are also very like very strong and very driven. And so it's kind of like when you give yourself the opportunity to acknowledge that, then you're going to hold yourself to that high standard of doing something about it, right? It's like we don't want to be victimizing ourselves intentionally or consciously, right? And so I think that it's like because you take a great deal of responsibility for recognizing when things are wrong or when they're not working, and needing to take responsibility and move forward on it, that sometimes it can take you a while to get to the place where you're willing to take that responsibility, because you know that you're going to be compelled to act on it, right? So it's almost easier to like let things kind of destroy us subconsciously, maybe a little bit longer than they need to, so that we can fully step into like taking action. Because once we recognize what it is that needs to change, or what it is that's not working for us, if we come to that realization and we continue to do the same thing, it's almost like more difficult and more painful, because now we're consciously choosing to like either sabotage or hurt ourselves or disempower ourselves. So I respect that. If you're in that place, just know like everything takes time. And what's most important is that you do what you need to do to get yourself into a position where you feel prepared to kind of take that next step in terms of, you know, reflection or self-actualization. I'm sorry. I'm like super dehydrated this morning. So I might have to stop to drink water, because I feel like my mouth is super pasty. It's like TMI, I know, but just in case you're bothered by it. So we'll get into your channeled messages. So the first one that came through was no use crying over spilled milk. And so that's the idea of like, it could be something that you tell yourself to avoid processing your emotions and like the experiences that you've had and how they've impacted you. Like maybe you're quick to kind of write things off in order to kind of remain in that self-protective state. It's easier to be like, oh, it doesn't matter, like it happened, I can't do anything about it, let it go. But you might not actually be fully letting it go. So you might not be taking the time that you need to process what's happened to you, and you might be writing it off as something that's not affecting you or that isn't worth your time, but you might actually still be experiencing and internalizing that energy. So it's to be aware, like, you know, not to oversimplify your experiences if you have a tendency to do that. But then the other side of it is the things that have happened to you in the past, particularly those things that are difficult or challenging or hurtful or disappointing, that really do impact us on some major level. It's recognizing that, yes, they impact us and they impact our personal reality, but we can't hold on to that forever, right? We can't live in the past. We can't carry that weight, especially if it's a challenging and hurtful one. It's like we're not meant to carry that for the rest of our lives and have that seep into all the other areas of our lives and our future experiences. So it's to be aware of anywhere that you're holding on to the past, or any kind of past hurts and beliefs, things that you're carrying and that you're basically reliving and are making you upset, right? Because it's like tying up your energy in past things, and it's realizing that at some point you do have to come to terms with it. You have to find a way to work through and accept what happened to you, whether it was fair or enjoyable or not, and then figure out like how to give yourself the gift of releasing that burden, so that you can give yourself the opportunity to move towards something better. So it's like, keep in mind, any way that you're kind of maybe clinging to, identifying with, or reliving the past, and how that might not be serving you or might be holding you back. Your next channeled message was everyone has it easier. And so it's kind of like that feeling or that assumption that like everyone else's life is easy. It could be in general, like every aspect of life, or it could be a specific aspect of life or area of focus that you find is particularly troublesome for you. Maybe an area that you're struggling in, something that's important to you, something you're trying to accomplish or achieve that isn't working out, or that you feel as though, you know, you're failing at, something like that. And it's like in those periods of struggle, or like working hard, or having high hopes for something and then continuously being disappointed or seeing it not work out. It's how we can take that experience and that hurt from that experience and project it outwards, and start to draw comparisons between ourselves and other people. And it's recognizing that, like, first off, it's not a helpful thing to do, because yeah, we're all here, we're all different people, we have different souls, we have different purposes, we came here to experience different things. We can't judge the value of our personal experience by comparing it to somebody else's, because it really is like comparing apples to oranges every time. And the other thing is that we don't have the knowledge or experience to be able to make that decision. So we can take a look at somebody's situation and be like, oh, well, they have it easier than me. They have it better than me. They have all the things that I want, right? And they just don't see it. But the fact is, you don't know what they don't have. You don't know how they look at other people's lives and feel that same way. And you don't know if they're, mentally or emotionally in a position to connect with and appreciate the things that they do have, because you don't know if they've been through some kind of trauma or loss, right? So it's kind of like everybody has their things. And sure, it may seem as though some people's lives are easier than others, but it's not really any of our business what anyone else has or what they're experiencing, because that has nothing to do with us. It has nothing to do with our path, our growth, the lessons we're meant to learn, and the things that we are challenged by, that we can recognize that other people have, and that can cause us to fall into that place of like jealousy or comparison, or even feeling like a victim, like we're disadvantaged in some way. The reason that we struggle in those areas is because that is deeply connected to the lessons that we need to learn, the healing that needs to be done, the areas for growth. And so it's like recognizing that, you're not being punished, you're not being disadvantaged. And there's no sense comparing yourself to anyone else. It's about recognizing like these challenges are opportunities for you to get to know yourself better, to love yourself better, and to kind of grow and evolve into a more wise and experienced version of yourself. So yeah, I would say like you can never make an assumption about someone else's life, especially with like social media and all the posturing, and like we don't know that people are completely honest about themselves and what they feel and what they experience. So on a very superficial level, things may seem to be good and you think that you have a basis for comparison, but in reality, like you really have no idea what's going on. And also, it's not like the struggle Olympics. Like we're not competing for who has life the most difficult, because as long as you're taking that upset and you're projecting it outside of yourself and focusing on what everyone else has, you're just going to stay in a place of perpetual struggle, because the whole point is to look inward and to see what you need, like what needs are not being fulfilled, what areas do you need to focus on. So it really is all about you, and it's asking you to take a look inward. So it's just remembering like what other people are doing, not your concern, none of your business, and it doesn't have any bearing or reflection on you and your value as a person, what you deserve. So yeah. The next thing that came through was dungeon, and it was like dungeon of emotions. And so this could go hand in hand if you have been feeling particularly avoidant about emotions or, challenging experiences. if you haven't necessarily been able to take time to reflect and to not only like acknowledge emotions, but actually like experience them, like to allow yourself to feel sad and to cry, or allow yourself to feel hurt and disappointed, and just sit in that feeling and know that, you know, it's a natural part of life to experience these fluctuations in emotions. And it's really just, they're markers for things that are going on in our lives. And it's okay to just express them. And then that's part of being able to let them go, right? So if we deny them, or we judge them, or we suppress them, if we lock them away in an emotional dungeon, we're not changing anything. We're not changing the fact of the matter. We're not changing the reality that we've been impacted in some way. We're just kind of denying and resisting it. And the more that we deny and resist and suppress things and lock them away in that dungeon, the more scary that dungeon becomes, the more volatile and pressurized, and eventually it will catch up to us, right? So it's also like, it's like, what's the purpose of a dungeon? A dungeon is where you lock away those dark, scary things, right? Those things that feel unsafe, those things that feel shameful, right? It's like the things that you don't want in your day-to-day life. And so I think this kind of goes hand in hand with the sense that there might be some fear about like who you are, what you're experiencing. You might feel afraid of your emotions, afraid of what your emotions are trying to tell you, afraid of being able to express and experience those emotions and come out the other side okay, right? Like maybe you're afraid that if you allow yourself to take time to express those emotions, that you're gonna like totally flip your lid, or like maybe you won't be able to do the things that you need to do. And I would just say, like, it's better to kind of give ourselves the time to deal with things as they come, because if we're not dealing with them and we're suppressing them, eventually we're going to overflow, and that may cause a breakdown that's even bigger and even more disruptive, and would take more time and focus away from every other area of our life than if we were to just handle things, you know, as they come. So I would just keep an eye on like anything that you feel like, oh, gotta lock that away. Can't let anyone know I'm feeling this. Can't let anyone know that I'm experiencing this. I feel uncomfortable acknowledging this. I don't feel as though I'm safe to express this. And it's about giving yourself a safe space to acknowledge and experience whatever you're going through, to talk to people about it, and to recognize that like it doesn't have to be this big scary thing. There's nothing to fear. You don't need to lock those parts of you away, right? This is a valid part of your experience, and it will ultimately serve you to acknowledge that like not everything is rainbows and sunshine, and it's okay to allow that to be seen and to allow that to be acknowledged, and that's what allows you to move through it. Whereas locking it away in the dungeon just makes it feel bigger and scarier than it really needs to be, right? The next thing that came through was forceps. So it's kind of like an idea, and the sense that I got around it, obviously we can think of it in the medical context, or like, you know, it's like a tool for like grasping and holding things. But I kind of got the sense of like, you know, performing a surgery and like delicately removing things with surgical precision. So this could be like a metaphor in terms of like emotionally dealing with things. Perhaps that's the way that you're going to begin to start working through these things that are kind of calling for your attention, right? So perhaps it's just kind of focusing on one thing at a time, and just very carefully and precisely working through it, not allowing yourself to become overwhelmed by everything that needs your attention, but kind of, you know, focusing on what requires attention right now, and just dealing with that carefully and attentively and completely, and until you can kind of remove that, and then you focus on the next thing, right? But yeah, so this could have any application to like anything that needs a particularly fine touch. But yeah, that's what's emphasized, is like precision, extracting with precision. And then the next thing that came through was my best friend, and the sense of like the title of like, who is your best friend? And maybe even the question like, who is my best friend? I need to define somebody as my best friend. Who is my best friend? So I don't know if this has been like maybe something that's on your mind. Perhaps there's a best friend that you've kind of fallen away from, or maybe like your idea of who was your best friend, the relationship that you have with them now isn't reflective. Maybe you don't have a lot of friendships and you're feeling like I should at least have a best friend, right? So I kind of got the sense of like perhaps being surrounded by people, but not necessarily having anyone that you connect with on like a deeper, more meaningful level. And so it's kind of like knowing who's around you and being able to recognize like who your people are, who your advocates are, being willing to connect with them, because anyone and everyone can simply just remain an acquaintance if we don't allow them in, if we don't allow ourselves the opportunity to connect with them or to get to know them. Or perhaps we have like a very, general superficial level of friendship, but if we never get to that point of vulnerability where we're willing to share more, then that other person doesn't feel comfortable sharing more with us in turn. And we don't end up getting to know each other like in a more authentic way. And so it's like, if that's what you're looking for, is like more depth and authenticity in your connections, and it's kind of paying attention to who feels like your type of person, right? Who is somebody that you're drawn to. And it might be a matter of like allowing the opportunity for a friendship to deepen, because there's a sense of like, yeah, maybe feeling a little bit left out or alone or disconnected from people because like you feel like you don't have that like best friend person that will just kind of like understand you or that you can talk to you about anything. And then the final message that came through was dependent origination. And I feel like there's always something associated with Buddhism that comes through. It's like every other month at least. So yeah, the law of dependent origination, I would suggest if it's something that interests you or Buddhism in general interests you, it might be worth doing some research or some reading to see what you come across, how that information might sit with you, if it kind of triggers any kind of understanding or awareness. But the general idea is that like everything is interconnected, right? Everything exists because we exist because everything else exists. Like, so nothing can exist independently of everything else. So it's like, if you try to trace back the existence or the cause of one particular thing, you'll find that that thing could not have come into existence without a perfect set of conditions, which requires a number of other things, right? So it's kind of like we're all connected, and it's coming to the realization that we're all connected and we all rely on each other, and there is no isolation of one thing from another, right? So we can't isolate ourselves from everybody else, or ourselves from even from the earth, right? So from our habitat, it's like we are deeply, even though we're disconnected from it because of the age that we live in, it's like we're still deeply connected to the earth. We rely on, the earth to sustain us in every way. And so it's recognizing, like, when you can look at all of existence as a whole and recognize that it is really like this complex machine, and every single thing and every single part plays an essential role, then you have a deeper level of reverence for life and existence and how we help each other. There's not a sense of disconnectedness, and it makes you a lot more aware of your responsibility in this life. So it's kind of like coming to accept the fact that everything depends on everything else and nothing can exist solely independently. It kind of gives you a greater appreciation for everyone and everything, whether it's something that you personally identify with as something that's necessary to you or not. And it kind of helps to, like, on a spiritual level, I guess, it kind of helps to ease our suffering and grow our love and compassion. And so it's like, whereas we might tend to look at something and be like, oh, well, this is the result of that, right? So it's like, but a result is never coming into being just because of one thing. It's like a very intense web of connection and a number of different inputs that basically get you to that end result. And so it's recognizing that we have a tendency to oversimplify our idea of causation, like what causes certain things. And it's recognizing everything is interconnected, and you kind of need this like melting pot of inputs in order to create. So it's like just this complex web that's all connected. And it's like recognizing that everything is necessary and valuable. And working on accepting this as a truth, and it makes it easier to accept yourself, and also like almost like your insignificance in a certain way, but also to accept other people as well. Okay, so your first card, oracle card, is share your voice. So it says, come out of the cave, persecution, expression. And your second oracle card is cracked open. So it says, rock bottom, surrender to the alchemy of life. Interesting. Okay, so with share your voice, this is really connected to like who you really are at your core, right? So this might be the parts of yourself that maybe it's like scratching, like getting a little bit deeper under the surface and acknowledging your experiences, what you think, what you feel, what your values are. It might be like going under the surface that scares you because you're not sure what you're going to find, and you're not sure what that's going to mean in terms of the life that you're going to live and how you're going to show up. So it could be that there's something there that's longing to be expressed or acknowledged. It could be your authentic self. Perhaps you've been trying to fit the mold of a person that you feel like is, professional and respectable, and it's like a lot to do with fitting in and pleasing other people or being acceptable to other people. So you might be going along with things that you don't particularly care for. You might be advocating for things or accepting things and going along with things that don't really serve you or that you don't really agree with. So there might be a certain amount of fear about who you really are and what you really value and how you want to live your life that you feel like isn't socially acceptable. Maybe it isn't the norm. Maybe the people that are around you aren't necessarily going to understand. Maybe it's very different from how they approach things. Because this is like anything that you're afraid of being judged about, right? Anything that you're repressing because you feel as though it won't be acceptable to other people. And like worrying about it being acceptable to other people can have a lot to do with just your judgments about what is acceptable and not. And that usually comes from fear. So it can be the way that we limit ourselves because we're afraid like, oh, well, I could never be this type of person. I could never do this because what would people think, right? And it's like, first off, doesn't necessarily matter what they think because their thoughts don't really have anything to do with your life, right? It's about you. But that can be a convenient thing that keeps us stuck, right? Because it's like, well, I'm at my core, I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of what this would mean for me. And so it's easy for me to get caught up in like, what is everyone else going to think? When really at the end of the day, it's like, well, what do you think about it? Right? And if you can't accept that part of yourself, then of course you're not going to be able to wrap your head around the fact that other people could accept it. And then even if they don't, that doesn't matter, right? So it's like a lot of the time what we project onto the people around us is our own fear of accepting ourselves in all of our wholeness. So this is about leaning into your authenticity and giving yourself the opportunity to share that openly. So speak your mind, speak your truth, talk about the things that you feel and that you believe in, talk about the things that are interesting to you, and do so without self-judgment, right? Because if it's something that is really uniquely important to you and it's a part of who you are, you can choose to suppress that for the rest of your life, but you're never going to make it go away, right? It's just always going to be that part of yourself that goes unrecognized and unheard, and that you kind of guilt and shame yourself over, and because you're afraid of how it might impact your life if you were to step into that energy. But the idea is To acknowledge and accept and express that is only going to bring you further into connection with yourself and help you to arrive at like a deeper level of understanding of like who you are and what's important to you. And by sharing your voice and saying whatever you have to say, putting yourself out there in an authentic way, yes, of course, there may be people that don't receive it well. There may be people who are confused. There may be people that simply don't agree. And there may be people that leave, right? Or distance themselves from you. But it's trusting that if that's the case, then those people, they don't truly align with you on a soul level, right? And so it's like, do you want to play it small and play it safe and do the things that you don't really believe in just so that you can align with people who do, right? Because if those people don't believe in those things and you feel pressured to go along with it, then you're kind of sacrificing yourself and your authenticity to have people around you that you're not going to be able to connect with on a deeper level, right? And so it's like, yeah, those people may leave, but it's trusting that whoever leaves is meant to not be a part of your experience right now. And that by expressing yourself authentically and sharing your voice, that is a beacon for people who are on that same wavelength, who have those same interests or beliefs, right? And so it's kind of like attracting your type of person by being yourself unapologetically, and you'll draw in more people, but also you kind of like set the precedent for the people around you too, that it's like, you know what, I'm not going to pretend to be someone that I'm not. I'm not just going to go along with things that I don't care for. And you don't have to do it in a rude or standoffish kind of way, but it's supposed to be kind of more empowering, right? And by being true to yourself and saying what you've got to say, honestly, and openly, you kind of set an example for other people to do the same, right? And sometimes people will avoid you because stepping into your truth and your authenticity makes them more aware of the ways that they're hiding and repressing their true self, right? So yeah, it's a big thing to do for yourself, but also it impacts other people as well. So it's like giving yourself permission to like step out of that cave, like whatever like closet you're putting yourself in, and whatever you're trying to hide, it's like allowing that out. And so this could specifically be like, perhaps talking, right? Perhaps having more open and honest and vulnerable conversations with people, sharing your thoughts and opinions. It could be writing, journaling. It could have to do with like music. So it's like whatever way you are called to share yourself, I would say it might be worth, making that a priority, doing more of that, and trusting that like your voice matters, and your voice matters most importantly in your life. And the more that you share your voice, the more that you speak your truth, and move in that direction, the more you're going to step kind of like into your light, your energy, and like along your path, right? So it's kind of like that is your tool for kind of navigating your own unique personal path, right? So this may be something that you've been holding yourself back from doing, or perhaps the way that you are currently using your voice and the words that you're using and the ways that you're presenting yourself to others, perhaps it's not completely honest and truthful, right? You might be repressing some things, you might be hiding some things, you might be kind of like strategically sharing some things and inflating them and like kind of downplaying the other things to give a certain impression. And this is about recognizing that your words are powerful and that those words that you speak and the things that you share, it should be honest and truthful and really representative of who you are and where you're at unapologetically. It doesn't have to be doctored to please anyone else, and it doesn't have to be doctored to make you look a certain way, because even if you succeed at making yourself look a certain way, that still isn't in alignment with what's going on the inside. And the only way to kind of get everything into balance is to kind of meet yourself where you are and share that openly. So yeah, be careful, to be mindful of the words that you use, be mindful of how you're presenting yourself, and take some time to check in and say, like, is this really who I am? Is this really what I stand for? Is this really what I believe? Is this really what I feel and I'm experiencing? Like, am I giving everybody the honest version of myself, or am I hiding in this cave of my authenticity and just, trying to paint a pretty picture, because that's almost like what this is. It's like, instead of stepping out into that beautiful reality, you're in the cave and you're trying to create the illusion that you're there, right? So to come along with cracked open, this kind of goes nicely with that feeling that I was getting of maybe being a little bit avoidant of challenge, struggle, hurt, difficult experiences and emotions. So perhaps you've been going through a major struggle. So it might be something that's been ongoing. It might be something that's been weighing on you that you kind of have to deal with, and you haven't been in a position to really do it. You might be working through a lot of like really heavy energy, and perhaps like this month you feel like you kind of need a break from it. But this is about not putting pressure on yourself to be perfect and successful, right? And it's like acknowledging, so it says rock bottom and surrender to the alchemy of life. And I think that so many of us resist the idea of hitting a rock bottom because it's like, oh, that's failure, that's loss. That means like, like you can't go anywhere, you can't get further down. You can't fail more than that. And we look at it as something negative, when in reality, it's like, it's almost an essential part of our growth, right? Because if you never get to that point where it's like, man, I don't think things can get worse, then you don't necessarily have the opportunity to grant yourself the grace that comes along with having to just accept things as painfully difficult as they may be, but then to also pick yourself back up from that and know that you can start to reshape things, and reconnect with something lighter, right? So essentially, whatever it is that's cracking us open, whatever's hurting us, whatever's making us feel as though we're just being challenged and pushed to our limits, maybe overridden with anxiety or despair or disappointment or like lacking hope. It can be like depression. So it's like, whatever that is, it's natural to resist it, to resist the experience, to resist the feelings, to resist the thoughts, and the awareness that maybe we need to begin embracing in order to move out of it. So it's like, sometimes we can take that energy of like really, really struggling, and we make it worse than it needs to be, and we stay there longer than we need to, because in reality, it might just be a certain set of circumstances that have arisen to help us come to a realization about ourselves, perhaps a need that has gone unmet for too long, perhaps a portion of ourselves that we've been denying and shamefully hiding away, and we're being asked to kind of like learn to forgive and accept ourselves and start sharing and expressing that more openly. So it's like, there's a lesson there. There's something that's longing for your attention. There's something that's longing to be learned and realized and potentially even healed. But if we are spending our time resisting it, then we're not ever going to see what we're being called to recognize, right? So it's like, there's a lot of personal power and release in just allowing yourself to be cracked open, right? And so allowing yourself to hit rock bottom, or to say, you know what, I have hit rock bottom, and to experience the emotions that come along with that. Because if you can accept and experience those emotions, regardless of how difficult it is, then you make space for light to come in, right? So it's kind of like, instead of locking yourself in that like emotional dungeon and pushing all those things away, allowing that dungeon to be cracked open, and all that scary, challenging stuff may come out, and then you have to feel it, and it may cause you to suffer. It may not be pretty, but once you feel it and once you let it out, there's all of that space to be filled with light and love and hope. And it's really difficult to connect with those more hopeful, lighter energies when you don't have any space to carry it, because you're full of doubt or fear or like, those scary emotions. And so it's recognizing that even in the most difficult situations, if you're able to see that there's an opportunity for you to grow and to develop, and to trust that it's happening for you, not to you. You're not a victim of life. You're not being punished or beaten up. You are just being given opportunities to learn and experience. Because ultimately, whatever it is that's threatening our well-being, and that's threatening to crack us open, it will crack us open eventually. It'll take us to that rock bottom eventually. And so the more that we try to avoid or suppress it, the more we just stay in that energy of not dealing with it, and the more the more intense that breakdown eventually becomes. So if we can recognize, like, hey, this is something that's really breaking me down, maybe I just let go of my thoughts, let go of my judgments, let go of my fears and the ways that I'm limiting myself, and maybe just accept that I'm struggling where I am, then it's like, what is that going to show you? Right? So it's kind of like, it is the most painful and difficult and challenging experiences that we have in our life that have the opportunity to kind of like alchemize us and like fortify us and enlighten us, you know, the most, to the greatest degree. And if we don't experience any amount of struggle, then it's hard to kind of know what we're made of. And it's also difficult to accept ourselves, because we can get away with denying ourselves. We can get away with judging ourselves and mistreating ourselves, suppressing our emotions, and disconnecting from what's most important to us. Whereas when we go through something difficult where we have absolutely no choice but to surrender, the only way to go is up from there. And the only thing that will help us, that we have to start connecting to, is like hope and love and you know, a kindness and compassion for ourselves. So it's basically trusting that, you know, you don't have to be afraid of whatever you're fearing, whatever experience you feel like is threatening your sense of well-being, because it's like, if you just allow yourself to have that experience and to get through it, you'll see that you'll open yourself up to the opportunity to connect with something more. So it's like, whatever that is for you, it's trusting that everybody has those things. Everybody has those moments. It's not something to be shamed or to feel shameful about, because like any judgment that you make about yourself, it's really just gonna keep you stuck in that energy. So you might have been stuck in this energy of like struggle or suffering for a long period of time, and it's simply because you're resisting whatever lesson life is trying to teach you right now. So it's kind of like, and you may also need to reconnect with your own light. I've got all of these cards that like seem as though they're gonna flip over, and then they don't. Okay, so your first card for this month is the Chariot. Your second card this month is the Queen of Swords. Your third card this month is the King of Pentacles. I get this idea, like this avoidance, whatever it is that you're avoiding, whatever you feel hesitant to share about yourself, it's just keeping you small. It's keeping you in a place where you feel small, and you're maybe like extending your personal suffering more, and you may even be making an identity of yourself out of struggle and suffering. And it's like, it's not because that's what your life is supposed to be, but it's because like you're resisting letting go and releasing, so that you can move beyond it, right? Right. And your final card this month is the Two of Swords. And at the bottom of the deck, we have the Three of Cups. So I'm going to get your clarifiers right away, and then we'll just read the cards all together. So first we'll clarify the Chariot. Okay, Chariot is clarified by the Nine of Swords. Let's clarify the Queen of Swords. Clarified by the Emperor. And then we'll clarify the King of Pentacles. So King of Pentacles is clarified by the Death card. And then let's clarify finally the Two of Swords. Two of Swords clarified by Father of Swords. And at the bottom of the deck, we have the Wheel of Fortune. Okay. So the one thing that I see, like, right off the bat, like, you've got a lot of swords energy, which swords are associated with air signs like Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. It has to do with thoughts, strategy, communication, like mental energy, beliefs, mindset, that kind of thing. So it's kind of like, yeah, there isn't a lot of fire sign energy here. And that might be part of the problem, Leo, is that like you're not necessarily connecting with your natural energy and your strengths and leaning on those. You might have a lot of energy tied up in thoughts. So like overthinking, anxiety, stress, limiting beliefs. And it's like kind of calling your attention to how your perceptions and your beliefs influence your behavior. Like that's the first thing I will say, because we've got the Nine of Swords, the Queen of Swords, the Two of Swords, and the Father, like the King of Swords. So, yeah, and I'm pretty sure the Death card, I'm pretty sure that's water. I think that's associated with Scorpio, and the Chariot, I believe, is Cancer. So it's like you've also got some emotional energy here. And the only place that fire is showing up is in your challenge for this month. So I think that's very, very telling. Okay, so let's start. So at the bottom of the deck, we have the Three of Cups and the Wheel of Fortune. The Three of Cups is all about like friendship, connection, community, celebration, like having good times together, connecting with people, like members of your community, members of your tribe, you know, those people that you just feel aligned with, right? And it's like, you know, opportunities for deep emotional connection and love and joy, and the recognition that we need to feel as though we are a part of a community. We need to have those people that we can share with deeply and lean on. And for that to come up with the Wheel of Fortune, it's like, this could have to do with maybe not having enough of those connections in your life, maybe not taking opportunities to connect with people or to allow relationships to kind of blossom, maybe not allowing yourself to actually connect with and enjoy time with people, because the Wheel of Fortune is all about fate, right? Like fate, destiny, and connecting with those things that are meant for us. But it's recognizing that, yeah, there might be a highest possible outcome for us that could be fated, or we could be destined to connect with, but that's not enough, right? Like it's not just going to happen for us. It's something that we have to acknowledge and prioritize, and we have to give ourselves permission to connect to and say yes to. So it's like we have to have our kind of relationship with ourselves, our beliefs about ourselves kind of in balance in order to be able to maintain that balance and open up to the way that our destiny can unfold. Because if we're out of balance and we're not in a healthy place, then it doesn't necessarily matter what opportunity we come in contact with. If we're not in the right frame of mind and we're not prepared to say yes, then we can shut down every opportunity for our wishes and dreams to be fulfilled. And because, you know, we might be in a place of fear. So the sense that I get is that there are opportunities available for you to have more connection, to have more depth and meaning in relationships. And it doesn't just have to be friendships. It can be love too, because this is cups. But like also just celebrating, having a good time. Like there are opportunities. It may feel as though there aren't, or maybe the right people, the right experiences and situations haven't come along. But it's basically saying like you kind of have to get into a place where you're willing to be that person for yourself in order to allow things to start coming in. Because if you're not seeing the opportunity, like if you are not willing to connect with it, it doesn't matter, right? And you're not going to start taking steps in the direction of having more of these experiences until you get yourself in a more kind of balanced place, right? Because the thing is, we don't know how things are going to unfold. We kind of have to just take a step out, you know, into our own energy, allow ourselves to be transformed and step out as our authentic selves and trust that like that is enough, right? And that the people who are meant to be in our life will come to us so long as we stay on our path, in our energy, and we're authentic about what we're putting out there. So it starts with you, and you have to kind of be aware and committed and continue to maintain that energy in order for that to impact the world around you. And it takes time. So there needs to be faith and trust in order to connect with that. So that is kind of like the underlying energy that's influencing this progression. And so you are being, I actually really like this. You're being advised to come into this month kind of like charging full steam ahead in terms of like your emotional awareness, I think, and particularly the connection between your thoughts, your perceptions, your beliefs, fears, limiting beliefs, and that connection to your emotions. Because it's like, so the Chariot is a card of like fast forward movement, right? And it's kind of like being able to trust yourself and your ability to connect to your intuition and to be guided by your heart and your emotions as you're on this like fast moving train, right? So it's kind of like trusting that you're going to be able to keep things in balance and allow things to happen for you, right? Because you don't have time to doubt yourself when you're trying to keep these like two stallions on the track. And this is all about like, you know, our shadow and our light, right? So it's like our good and our positive and negative, and being able to keep that in balance and maintain our balance so that we can get to our end goal without being derailed. And so it's acknowledging that whatever it is that you're thinking about is manifesting in your reality, and the things that are most prevalent in your mind, especially those things that you're stressing about, the things that are keeping you up at night, your worst case scenario, like the opposite of a daydream, like your nightmares. It is that energy. If that's the energy that you're in, that's where most of your focus is. That's the track that you're on. That's the goal that you're heading to, right? And so it's kind of being aware of how you perceive yourself, how you perceive life and the people around you, any worries or fears or anxieties, and how those impact your belief and your emotional experiences, right? Because it's like anything that's negative or hurtful or fear or anxiety ridden, you may acknowledge that it's not good or helpful to you, but if you can't disconnect yourself from it and try to connect with something more aligned, then it's like ultimately that is what's going to be steering your ship, right? And those are the types of things that take you off balance. So it's like whatever you're focusing on, that's where you're going to go. And if it's a place that you don't want to go, then it's like it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So a lot of times our worry and fear and anxiety isn't necessarily rooted in any truth or reality, but it becomes reality because we become so consumed by it, and we're on like we end up being on a one-way track there. So it's like if you are on a track somewhere, it's realizing that whatever you're focusing on, whatever you place the most value and emphasis on, and whatever is like whatever energy is kind of influencing your daily experiences the most, it's like that is what you're creating more of for yourself. So this might be a really good opportunity for you to start coming to a deeper level of awareness of like your limiting beliefs, your fears, your anxieties, you know, the things that keep you up at night, and recognizing that ultimately it's up to you to decide what you're going to focus on and where you're going to go. And if you allow the mind and that mental energy and anxiety to get the most of you, then it's like you're just going to be on a one-way track to more of that, right? And so it's recognizing that at any time you can take your power back and try to like lovingly adjust your perceptions and beliefs into something that's going to be more loving, more gentle, more encouraging, more aligned with you. Because your challenge this month is showing up as the Queen of Swords and the Emperor together. So this is like air and fire energy. And it's like, we know that air and fire together is a very volatile combination, right? It's like the air feeds the fire. And so the Queen of Swords is all about, you know, being able to make rational, logical decisions, like not necessarily listening to or following the heart, not necessarily giving time and space to emotions, and recognizing that, like, you know, there is a time there's a time to be more grounded and rational and strategic in your approach, and also like fair and honest in communication. So this can also be about speaking your truth. It might be difficult for you to connect with and to speak your truth and to feel confident doing so, because perhaps you're so caught up in emotions, or what kind of emotional implications might come as a result of people not connecting with your truth or not respecting it, that you don't allow yourself to step into that. So it's kind of like, what's true for you? What's true for you? What thoughts and beliefs are going to be empowering? How can you let go of the things that are limiting and inspired by fear? And it's kind of like, it's almost like being able to tame your emotions with your thoughts instead of feed them. So it's like, to think about it this way. So it's like the cup is locked up. So that is like emotional awareness, intuition. So if you don't trust your emotions and your intuition to guide you, because like there's a lot going on there and you're not able to get a handle on it, it's like, first you kind of have to get a handle on your mental energy, because if you have a lot of stress and anxiety and you're motivated by fear, you're never going to be able to get a handle on your emotions in a healthy way, because your thoughts and fears could very well be causing more reactivity on an emotional level instead of allowing you to just kind of experience and release, right? So it's like you have to get into a point where you're able to give yourself space to feel those emotions. And also like the Emperor is like a very strong, confident, large and in charge kind of energy. It's like a boss, a manager, a leader. So it's somebody who, the Emperor may not actually be kind of making things happen for themselves. They may not have like projects and things that are coming to fruition because they're working on a larger scale. Like they're leading a group of people to a certain outcome. And so the thing is, it's like you have to be in a good, healthy space to be a good leader, right? And so the Emperor knows how to motivate people, but also can be like a little bit controlling, a little bit domineering, a little bit aggressive in their approach to having those end goals accomplished. And so sometimes this energy can be really harsh and aggressive and just like not at all flexible, and it can be really off-putting for people. So it can cause you to like butt heads with people, and it can cause like anger and aggression and frustration. And things can kind of go up in flames, right? So the Emperor is like very strongly rooted in their beliefs and their skills and their abilities, but it can make them uncompromising. So it's like, whatever your relationship is to like giving yourself the opportunity to be true and honest to yourself and to communicate that with other people, but also being firm and standing true in terms of like what you know to be true, what you're passionate about, what your skills are. Because it's like balancing out these energies, particularly like if your thoughts are not in a good place, then that just, it makes this like fire energy a lot more volatile as well. So it could be like also your thoughts about your strengths, your purpose, your ability to lead, whether other people respect you or not, and recognizing that like, there needs to be fairness and compromise. And it's like you have to give yourself permission to be a well-rounded human being, right? Like you can't just favor one aspect of yourself and deny the other. It's about trying to heal and bring all of those different aspects and qualities into balance so that you can have a full and enriched experience. And so, yeah, you might find yourself being like feeling really stubborn, feeling resistant, feeling angry. And it's kind of like, it might be because you're not allowing yourself to like be your true self and to follow your true north, right? So that energy, however that makes sense to you, can very well be what's triggering you or what's coming up this month. And you're being encouraged to connect with this grounded King of Pentacles energy and death. So the King of Pentacles is a very solid, very calm, slow-moving kind of energy. It is like just doing the work, right? Putting your head down and getting things done, acknowledging that like You know, sometimes the best way to work through things is to just slow and steady, you know, not overthinking, not getting too fiery and worked up about it, not putting too much focus on emotion. So it's like all of those things that are derailing you may very well be everything but this grounded Pentacles energy. It's like Pentacles energy is like the material world. So it's our money, it's our, you know, career, our material possessions. It can be family and the ability to like manifest, right? So it's like you might want to just connect with and realize your ability to manifest abundance in the material world and think about all of the things that you've created for yourself. So it's like, think about all the work that you've put in, all you've been able to accomplish. Take a look at all of the abundance that's in your life right now, whether it feels like enough or not, and recognize all of the work and focus that it's taken to get there. And it's like at your core, you have this ability to achieve this and to make things happen in the world around you, in spite of all of the other things that have been out of balance, in spite of troubling thoughts and troubling emotions and like fiery passion and reactivity, right? So it's like, if you can lean into this energy and your ability to do that with all of these things kind of competing for your attention and threatening to derail you from that track toward your goal, then it's like you're able to kind of grasp like how much more would you be capable of if you were willing to give yourself the time and attention to start balancing out, you know, the shadows, like in terms of like your mindset, your perspectives, your beliefs, your self-talk, the judgments that you make about other people, and like your passion, your creativity, the things that light you up, but that also can set you on fire if they're not being recognized. And then your emotions, right? The difficult emotions that may bring you down and take you off track and be discouraging, and the positive emotions that fill you up with love and joy and excitement and help you, you know, move on to something more. So I feel like, yeah, it's all about recognizing your ability to achieve a goal, even in the most material, physical sense. And it's like, you need all of your other skills to do that. And the more that those are in balance, the more abundance you're going to have, the more successful you'll be in a material sense. So especially if you're motivated by like some kind of material goal, like a certain, you know, amount of money in your bank account, a certain career, you know, status, whatever, you know, house, family, it's recognizing that you have the ability to get there, but you can't overlook the importance of bringing all the other aspects in your life into balance. So it's like, you can't just focus on the material sense. It's recognizing that you're already really good at doing that. You're already able to do it. And it's kind of giving yourself permission to work out all the other stuff. And that may cause you to kind of do a little bit of an inventory in terms of like, you know, what's not serving you? Where is your energy tied up that's not necessarily productive and not helpful? What is something that maybe used to work for you and serve you and it's kind of outdated and it's just another thing on your plate? Because this is allowing yourself to change, allowing yourself to grow, to close doors on people, relationships, behavioral patterns, perceptions and beliefs, different versions of yourself, and allowing yourself to step into something new. So we can't connect with better, but like new energy until we're willing to kind of close the door on the past. And as long as we're carrying that weight or limiting ourselves to a previous version or a previous experience, we're not fully allowing room for more to come in or for new experiences and insights. So it's kind of like there could be a just letting go of a past version of yourself, letting go of a past relationship or a past hurt, and giving yourself permission to move on from it and recognizing like, okay, I had an experience, I learned, I can take the lesson and do better for myself in the future, but I don't have to stay stuck in this place. And the highest possible outcome for this month, I love it, is it's like, you know, making a decision. So from this Queen of Swords being your challenging energy, it's going to like a skill, right? You're kind of leveling up into the King of Swords, which is like recognizing your truth, speaking fairly and honestly and directly about what's important to you, and taking action on that, right? Expressing that to other people, allowing what's true for you, what you value to be expressed in the decisions that you're making, the direction that you're heading, and having the confidence that you're going to be able to keep all of the other challenging aspects of life, whether it be emotional, whether it be material, that you know what's right for you, and that you can kind of stay focused and not be a victim to overthinking or, anxiety or fear. And that's going to empower you to feel prepared to make decisions for yourself. So there may be decisions or things that you need to do or things that you need to change that you're currently avoiding because the way forward is not clear, or you don't think that you have enough information, or you're not confident enough about the information that you have in order to make the most beneficial or empowered decision. But this is saying like you're kind of going to get to the point where you're connected enough to your inner truth that you're going to have that clarity, and you're going to trust yourself to be able to not only make the decision that feels right, but to trust that that's going to take you where you need to go. So it's like taking the blindfold off, but the blindfold sometimes doesn't come off until we've made that decision from our heart. And that decision is not necessarily going to be a logical, rational one based on what we can see, but it has to kind of come from our inner knowing, right? So your first oracle card is sleep is a spiritual practice. So I would say just make sure you're getting your rest, particularly if there's stress and anxiety keeping you up. You might need to give yourself some time to settle down. You might need outlets for that, so that you can kind of relax and get into like practice good sleep hygiene. You need that rest. And when I honor my feelings, I find my power in powerless situations. So yeah, allowing yourself to experience and acknowledge your emotions and express them, because it feels scary, but that's actually where your power lies, right? So the sense of like power or being in charge or in control, it doesn't come by exerting our control onto other people or things. It's actually in kind of acknowledging and accepting what we're experiencing and giving ourselves the opportunity to experience that wholly in a natural way, right? So the power is always with you, and it's whatever you believe, whatever you focus on, that ends up being true. So if things are not working for you at any point in time, you can change your perspective, but you have to kind of honor whatever you're feeling. You might not have to act on those feelings or do anything about them, but just honoring that they're important and there's something to be learned could very well be helpful, right? So it's just like, I think this is all about really like learning how to accept yourself, accept your feelings, accept what's true for you, and accept that you don't have to be committed to your fears, or like at the mercy of your fears and your challenging emotions, right? That there's a shadow and a light side to everything. So like all of these energy, like swords and cups and all of that, like there's a dark, challenging side, and there's an enlightening, empowered side. And it's recognizing that even if you're kind of in the shadow side, that you can start making strides to connect with the more empowered version of that energy. And that really just has a lot to do with you coming into greater knowledge of and acceptance of yourself. And so your oracle card, the final one for this month, is By the Book, which is card number 11. So I'm just going to read this directly from the guidebook, and we'll see if this might have additional insight for you. Someone else had this month. I think it may be Taurus. I think Taurus also had this message. So the essential meaning: abiding by social rules, conformity, respecting cultural or family customs, universal laws. So the oracle's message: the universe works within a structure of divine laws and principles that provides a framework for human experience and evolution. The law of abundance, the law of prayer, the law of karma, the law of attraction, the law of thought, the law of compensation, and the law of nature are only a few that are known. These principles create perfect order and operate with a kind of precision beyond human understanding. Even revolution has its place in universal law. Human beings, in turn, have their own laws and customs that vary from culture to culture and family to family. Laws keep social order and govern behavior, reflecting an instinctive understanding that harmony is important. This is a time to learn these laws and conform to them, rather than being the rebel and flouting them. When this card appears, submit to structure and follow the rules, even if they seem to make no sense. Release resistance, for universal laws will correct any disharmony. Open your eyes to those universal laws, and it will be easier to go by the book at this time. So there's more message, but I just want to touch on the fact that if you're having a hard time confronting or kind of getting into your own energy, especially if a more spiritual approach interests you, I would say it might be helpful to like research those laws, like the law of attraction, the law of karma, the law of thought, because the more that you understand how they work, and the more that you kind of understand the rules, that'll give you a structure to start applying and making changes in your life, especially if you don't know where to start. So that might be helpful. And especially the fact that like law of dependent origination came up in your channeled messages, that might be something. So it's kind of like there is a framework for you to follow if you need some help starting out, and that might actually be the best way rather than to try and figure it out all by yourself. There's a relationship message. Getting along with others entails understanding and respecting who they have become as a result of their environment, culture, and experience. Find the middle ground that allows the relationship to flourish while honoring the individuality of the other person. Play things by the book instead of trying to break the rules or pressure others to conform to the way you want to do them. Your connection will deepen as a result. So yeah, it's like letting other people, it's like knowing what works for you, but recognizing that we're all different and like not trying to force people to do things your way. It's like helping to meet them there, because you wouldn't want somebody to force their ways on you too, right? Prosperity message. At this time, you can expect a return on your investment. Whatever you have pursued, be it a dream you've long cherished, a skill you've cultivated, or a service you're called to, will come to you if you are willing to go by the book. You don't need to reinvent the wheel to be successful. Follow in the footsteps of others who have already achieved the things you're striving for. You can learn a lot by observing the structures that are already working. Your creative projects and commitment to prosperity are in alignment with the needs of the world, but impatience may tempt you to cut corners to get there more quickly. Stick with what you know works, and you will attract abundance. And then protection message. So this is like the shadow aspect of this card. If you're challenged by this kind of energy, so now is the time for a real change in consciousness as you are incited to revolt. Challenge the structures that are limiting authentic progress. It is not enough to rebel in small ways. This is a call to revolution. Focus on what you really want to achieve, regardless of whether it feels so far outside the box that the established order may reject it. That could very well be this here. Genius, invention, and transformation are rarely comfortable and less likely to be accepted by the mainstream. It may be time for you to say no to the way of your group, take a stand, and make real changes. It could be that the structure of your inner world is alerting you to the need for a complete overhaul. This is a time for transformation, so let go of the fear of change. Your intuition will lead you through the darkness. There is no turning back now. Trust that light will dawn. Epiphanies will surely lead to miracles. So I think that's really good, because this is like about being willing to acknowledge and trust your inner guidance and the ways that you feel limited by the structures and the people and the things that are in place around you, right? So this could be what's causing you to feel small or to not share your voice in ways that are true and authentic to you. And it's recognizing that, so structure and rules and like, doing things by the book, yeah, there's a time and place for it. And there are aspects and there are situations where that is beneficial and helpful, right? So it's like we don't need to start from scratch if there is a perfectly good framework that can help us achieve what we're trying to achieve. But at the same time, we can't conform to those rules and those structures to the point where we're not allowing ourselves to follow our authentic path or to step off in a direction of something that makes sense. Because it's like the very things, the main, modes of change in our world, and like they said, like genius, inventions, stuff like that is outside the box. That's how we progress, right? And we get more out of life. But if that had to be mainstream and understood and accepted by everyone, it would never happen, right? Like if people didn't have the courage to step out of the box and try something new, especially something that makes sense to them or that they're passionate about, then we would never progress, right? So it's like there has to be that kind of willingness to rebel against like what other people think, what they say, what they do, and to give yourself the opportunity. So it's like use the structure in ways that it will benefit you and help you move further along your path, but also don't be restricted by it or by other people. If it's keeping you stuck in a place where, you're not feeling empowered, or you're not, kind of moving in the direction of your highest good. And that's only something that you can determine. And like, once you get all of these kind of competing energies into balance, and you come to a better kind of connection to yourself once your thoughts are quieted, your emotions are quieted, you've got kind of like a good stable relationship with yourself, then it makes it a lot easier to receive and understand that internal guidance from your intuition. So yeah, I think that's really great. It's a very powerful reading for this month, Leo. So if you are going through a lot, just know that is totally okay. That is part of life. We all go through cycles. And the best way is just to kind of like lean into it, see what it's trying to show you. You might be humbled, you might be broken open by your experiences. You might have to really just express your feelings. You might have to lean into that avoidance that you've been feeling about coming to certain realizations, and recognize that that is ultimately an encouraging, empowering thing that's going to help you step more into your light, more into your authenticity, and eventually like get more out of life, right? And that's what you deserve. So I'm happy for you guys. I hope this reading helps. If you did enjoy this reading, the best and easiest way to support me is to like this video on YouTube, leave a comment. Beyond that, if there's anyone you could think of that might benefit from or enjoy my readings, you can share my content with them. And don't forget to head on over to my channel at Bright Soul Collective Tarot. Check out my other readings, and make sure you're subscribed to my channel, but also signed up for notifications so you can stay up to date on new readings as they're posted. So Leo, it's been an absolute pleasure. This is huge energy for you this month. I am very excited to see how this goes. I'm excited to take a look at next month and to see like what kind of follows on the heels of this energy. So yeah, in the meantime, I am wishing you all the very best. I hope June is great for you.